Sure.
So I'll go ahead and make sure. All right. So first, just like basic questions I had was, I was curious what your major was. I didn't know what you studied while you were here.
Physical education.
Okay.
They didn't have very many majors. And they had art and history, and I was not interested in either of those. I wanted to major in math, some kind of math or algebra or something like that. They didn't have any math programs. So I majored in what I thought was the next best. So I got a teaching degree also. So that's, but it was not the major, that brought me to Flagler. I just was happy to be here.
That was
like you.
Yes.
Looking around and
Yes.
this is paradise.
It really is. That was my next question, is like, what brought you to Flagler? How did it get on your radar? Because Janet's just seems like kind of a stroke of luck.
It was. Yeah, because what, they paid $100 in her.
Yep. Yep.
She's got a funny story. Well, my older sister went to Mount Ida, and Mount Ida originally, when Flagler was first opened, started out as a sister college to Mount Ida. And when I was up there, Dr. Edward Carlson, who was the vice president, had us over to his home. He was the one who gave my sister, got her interested in going to into Mount Ida. And so we went to a cocktail party at his home, and he looked at me and he said, "Would you be interested in coming to Mount Ida?" I was a junior in high school at the time. I said, "Well," and my mother was looking at me like, "You better say yes, because your sister's here on full scholarship. So you ought to be interested, because she's done so well." I said, "Well, I guess." I hesitated, and he said, "Well, we're starting a new school in St. Augustine, Florida. Would you be interested in that?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "I know St. Augustine's the oldest city from history class, but does it have a beach?" He said, "Oh, yeah, it's on a beach." I said, "That's where I want to go."
Yep.
So I had always, through high school, my older sister is brilliant, and she was always such a great student. And I didn't want to have to always follow her footsteps and have those same expectations. So I was delighted to hear of a place that had a beach.
Yes.
So, and they offered me a full scholarship like they had offered her one. So it was a no-brainer. Here I came. It was great.
Do you remember, I'm curious if you remember when you met Janet for the first time?
Oh, I met Janet my second year. I was a sophomore.
And she was a freshman, right?
She was a freshman.
Yeah.
Right. And when I came, when I first came the first year it opened, they asked me to come and help to set up the first Student Government Association, because I'd been in student council in high school. And so I came early, and one of the first things that we needed to do was to welcome all the students when they arrived on campus. So that was one of the things that I did my sophomore year, came in as student government orientation guide, and there were a number of us student leaders who were to welcome all the other students, help them to their rooms, show them their rooms, and so that was when I met Janet that second year.
It's cool.
Yeah,
She was
fun.
just telling me so many little stories, and it reminds me of me and my best friend. I think it's so funny.
Oh, no. Well, I had a wonderful roommate, and we had a great time together. And Janet and I both have another great friend, Patty. And what we all couldn't think of could not be thought of, I think. But we were all physical education majors. And we called ourselves the social jocks. Because there were four of us who really weren't very good at any sport. we were a little good. I was good at tennis and gymnastics, but none of the other sports. And we liked to have a good time. So the four of us developed quite the reputation. We had a great attitude about everything we tried. We just weren't very skilled.
Yeah, I understand that.
And I never, ever taught physical education, even though that was my degree.
Yeah. What did you end up
it.
doing out of college?
I ended up going to graduate school, George Washington University, and getting my master's and my doctorate in higher education.
Okay.
So Dr. Proctor was my mentor, and he kind of needed me because I was in student government. And when he came aboard as the new president my junior year, he kind of needed to get his finger on the pulse, so to speak, of the students. And I really kind of needed his support too for all that we wanted to accomplish in student government.
Yeah.
So he and I worked very closely together and got to know one another very well, and he became not only a wonderful friend but a mentor. And I enjoyed not only learning so much from him always, but also I loved working for him when I graduated. So, and then I, of course, kept coming back. I never could seem to kind of completely get away from my alma mater. There's something about this place that gets into your skin. You know?
Yeah, there really is.
That sand gets into your shoes very quickly here. So,
because that's what, Janet talked also about how, and I'm curious to hear more about you going to see Lawrence Lewis about getting the school accredited. If you could just talk about that a little
well, originally to keep the doors open.
Right.
My junior year, there was a crisis at the college because the Carlson family, who ran Mount Ida, really never really came down, and I don't know, they had some financial problems, so it looked like the college was going to close. So students started leaving, parents started coming and picking up their children because they were afraid it was going to close. And there was a lot of student upheaval and unrest because we didn't know, why would you continue staying at a place that might close? So I, since I was student government, I went to Reverend David Redding at the Presbyterian Church because I knew he was very close with Lawrence Lewis. And I asked him, could he get me an appointment with Mr. Lewis? Because I didn't have any way of knowing how to get in touch with him. And I didn't know whether he would meet with me anyway. Reverend Redding got a secret meeting with me and Mr. Lewis and a couple of other students. And it was in Reverend Redding's study at the church built by Henry Flagler. And I'll never forget, Mr. Lewis came in the room and he looked at all of us students, I think there were 3 of us, and said, ask us what our names were, what our major in, and what we had to say to him. And I said, we're here, Mr. Lewis, because we want you to keep this college open. You've got to keep the doors open here because we don't want to have spent 3 years here from a defunct college. And I will have wasted 3 years of my life if you can't figure a way to keep the doors open. And there are about 60 of us students still left that will stay here if you'll keep the doors open. They've said they'll stay. But would you please do what you can? And he listened to all of us, and very nice man. He said, I'm making no promises, but I will do what I can. But give me a week. I'll get back to you in a week. We had so the dean posted a notice that we would have a student meeting a week later, 7 o'clock, in the West Benito room of the dining hall, because that was our lecture hall, was the Benito room at that time. the whole college showed up. All the students, all the faculty, all the staff, people who worked. It was the whole crew. We filled the West Veneto room, and Mr. Lewis came in and he made this announcement about how it's, it's been a difficult time in the college's history, and the college is a baby, but this college is only a baby, but it is alive and kicking. And everybody went nuts. Everybody just cheered, and we were so happy. And Janet and our friends had gotten everybody to pitch in, and we had gone and gotten 10 cases of beer, Bush beer, cheapest we could find, and iced it down in the bathtub in my dorm room. Because after the meeting, we were going to celebrate one way or the other. If the college went down, we were going to celebrate that we went down with it. But if they were going to keep the doors open, we invited the whole school to come and have a beer. So we were so excited, and we formed a human line down the hall to my room and passed beers down so that everybody had a beer in the dorm to celebrate that our college was not closing. Can you imagine going to a college that that? It was a different time.
Yeah.
And it was very small. We were lucky if there were 60 of us girls left. We were so excited, and they brought a new president. Mr. Lewis and Mr. Bailey. John Bailey was the head of the trustees, and he was a wonderful man from St. Augustine. He and his whole family, his son Mark is still on the board of trustees now. And Mr. Bailey and Mr. Lewis worked real hard, and they contacted all the businessmen that they knew and asked them to contribute money to keep the college doors open and kept this college afloat. And so they said they had more applications for the first class, for the student class to come in than they did. No, they had more applications for the presidency than they did to get into the college at that time, because nobody knew about Flagler. So, but they selected Bill Proctor to come in, and he, his background was football, and he had worked under Bobby Bowden as an assistant coach, and he kind of ran things like that. And we got along from the very moment I met him. But I was asked to get some students together and welcome him for dinner. And so what he noticed was, there was a table of about 8 of us students, and he noticed that we were the only ones in the dining hall who wore dresses, because everybody else wore cutoffs and flip-flops and very, very casual. But we did dress up for him, and he noticed we had really dressed up, and there was no dress code here. And but also, like when we were, one of the first acts of our student government was to vote to go co-ed. We first organized the week before the college opened, because I got down here, there were no guys around. I said, what are we going to do for entertainment? What are we going to do? There's nothing to do. St. Augustine was a sleepy town. And we had one tavern that we could afford was St. George Tavern. So we frequented there. But we weren't really old enough until like my senior year to even go in there. So we had to make our own fun. And you might want to ask me some specific questions, because I can ramble all day.
No, this is exactly what I want. This is perfect. Because Janet did the same thing, talking about the townies and just how much fun it was. And that's exactly what I want to hear about, is just like what the general experience was. So you guys voted to go co-ed the second year it was co-ed. Right.
Well, they actually, yes, the second year they brought 7 guys in.
The Magnificent Seven.
The Magnificent Seven. We just thought they were adorable, and they all flunked out after about a year.
Did they really?
They did.
Okay, so
and one of them, a couple of them came back and still is. And Dr. Proctor brought him back and put him on probation, and he did graduate, but most of them promptly. It was too much fun for 200 girls and 7
guys. Yeah. So Janet's husband wasn't one of the original 7.
No.
When did he come to the school?
Oh, I'm not sure. He had gone to another college before too, but I think that was probably. I think he didn't come until 1971.
Okay. So then, in the Magnificent Seven, they were not
72. Yeah, maybe he came in 72.
And they were not on campus. They were out.
The beach mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw some pictures of some of the parties that went on there. It just looks like fun.
We really. It was extraordinary. We ran our own college, so to speak.
Right.
We planned whatever we wanted to do. We had a budget for student government, but we were the first to plan any of the activities. It was up to us to decide what we wanted to do. So, the Disney trip is what I set up, the first trip ever, because when Disney World opened, I wanted something for us to do. And, we always had beach parties, and they got a bit wild. And the police had to break up a few of those.
Well,
I never got arrested on the beach.
And there you have it.
That's right.
But yeah, and she talked about that too, because there wasn't any discipline really. You didn't have a president, and you guys were starting the school, so you guys ran the school.
We had RAs, and we didn't really have RAs then at all. We had people who were to be watching over the dorms, but by my junior year, we were pretty much just in the dorms running it ourselves. And that we did have a dean of students who was quite lax and at that time, but it was very different. And when Dr. Proctor came and installed rules, he made us he made us have rules. I did not like that.
I bet.
He and I did not see eye to eye on things like no visitation. I thought it was archaic and ridiculous that he came in and said no visitation. After all, we were flower power and hippies and flower children,
Yeah.
What do you mean, no visitation? It's free love and everything. What do you mean? Anyway, for years they had no visitation here. And we always kind of locked horns about issues like that. But bottom line, Dr. Proctor was a fabulous leader, and he knew what was needed to turn this college around and to put it on the map. We didn't know, first of all, he came first, we worried about survival. Then in order to survive, and we were all working together as students, and then when I worked with him, we all were united because we wanted then for the college not only to stay alive, but then it had to become accredited. And you had to graduate one class before you were even eligible to become accredited. So I had to graduate from an unaccredited institution before, that didn't have any possibility of becoming accredited.
Right.
But I didn't know when I came to college that I should have gone to a school that was accredited. I was young and naive, and I didn't know a lot of things like that. So, and I was lucky to be going on full scholarship. I couldn't afford to go anywhere else. So if this college closed, my future was truly in question. On the other hand, my mother wanted me to watch my step, as she said, because the Carlson family, who was they were getting out of the college, we were indebted to them because of my scholarship. And, I would never have done anything to be ungrateful or do anything to them. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of between a rock and a hard place, because I was secretly going to Mr. Lewis asking would he get me an appointment with the president, because what we needed was a new college president.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult.
So for me, it was kind of a tough decision, because I told my mother, I said, Mother, I will be, I'm not going against the Carlsons in any way, but if the college is going to close if they are still here. We've got to have a new president who stays here full time to run the place. It's just not working. Mm-hmm. And she goes, well, just be real careful, because they really gave you this opportunity.
Yeah.
So I that's why my meeting was secret.
Right.
I couldn't afford to do anything to jeopardize my scholarship.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine going through that.
I know. Well, if you're on scholarship and that's how you're going to go to college,
right?
You do. I called him Uncle Ed after a while, like my sister. He was not related, but Dr. Carlson. Mm-hmm. After my freshman year, I went to him and I said, "How do I not have to have a work grant?" Because my freshman year, I had to work. And which is logical. Mm-hmm. I was here. Full scholarship. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, if you make straight A's, you won't have to. I said, well, I already have. He goes, all right, well, every semester that you make straight A's, we will take, you don't have to worry about a work grant. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I was very inspired to keep my grades up.
Right.
I didn't have a choice.
Yes.
If I didn't want to work. Mm-hmm. Now, I had to, of course, maintain a good average to maintain my scholarship. Mm-hmm. But here, they didn't care.
Yeah.
They just needed the students. So, in many respects, we were in the best possible world. I mean, they needed us to be here. Mm-hmm. We were pretty much running our own selves, running the dorms. We had fabulous food the first couple of years. Mm-hmm. We had gourmet dinners. The first year they were served family style. We were very spoiled. Mm-hmm. And we also had maid service in the dorms. Yep. So they cleaned our rooms once a week, vacuumed, and brought us toilet paper. So we were never without toilet paper.
Yeah, that's nice. I wish they still did that.
I know. And we had fabulous food. Now that did change. Mm-hmm. But to my knowledge, we have never ever called our gorgeous dining hall a cafeteria. Mm-mm. It is not a cafeteria. Mm-mm. It doesn't matter what kind of food is served. It is a dining hall.
Yep.
And all students sort of get that. Mm-hmm. We also rarely ever had vandalism. We had some in the early days by some crazy students, but mostly no vandalism because people were so proud to be in this college, in the building. Mm-hmm. Now, when I got here, however, the college was pretty shabby. They were about to close the doors because of financial. They just couldn't maintain a hotel of this grandeur. Yeah. And needed all kinds of work and preservation. Mm-hmm. So truly the community's quite fortunate in my book that the administration over the years at Flagler College has been willing to commit so much to historic preservation. Mm-hmm. And I forget how many historic buildings we have, but we've done more than anybody in this community for preserving our beautiful history in St. Augustine, especially at the college and the hotel. So I think when you attend a small, well, it's still fairly small, but when you're attending a school that's so small in a setting like this, when you have fabulous faculty, I think it's a really nice recipe for success with good leadership. But I've also seen what will happen if we don't have good leaders. I also think John Delaney's fabulous, and I'm getting off of the subject, so get me back.
Oh, no, you're so fine. Yeah, I'm just thinking about how unique of an experience that is as a student to not only be going to college for the first time, like being a freshman is hard enough, but then having to like run the school and have the school be so dependent on you rather you being so dependent on the school. It's just, it's a very...
Oh, I can remember when they said, and they had planned their first orientation, but then they said, okay, what do you want to do for student activities? I thought, well, let me think. Besides beach parties, we had mixers. They were terrible, but we had mixers that must have brought the dregs of society from Jacksonville University and Embry-Riddle and University of Florida. But they did try to have what they used to call were mixers, and they'd bring college kids in from these other schools, and all men. But the men who would come to these mixers, we just were not interested in, so the mixers didn't fly.
Yeah.
So, we planned the first spring weekend, and we had a spring formal dance, and we had great bands, and we had Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes one year in the what's now the Flagler room was a gorgeous room. They were the parlors. And have a formal dance in there.
Yeah.
It was really fun. But we all were sneaking drinks, and we were in our formals, and we were, taking over the band, helping them to sing. It was just your typical college dance, even in a gorgeous place like here. We were acting like college students.
Yeah, of course.
Silly and crazy. But we pretty much, most of the activities, for example, that continue today, whether it's orientation week or fall weekend with games on the campus, or spring weekend. Now, I'm sure we got ideas from other campuses, but it was, when I think back, the opportunity that I had, who else gets to be one of the first students of a college that's opening? You don't think about it when you're going through it necessarily, how unique it was. But I remember visiting a good friend of mine who went to a school at Alabama, a university, the Florence State University. And as beautiful a campus as it is, and there were males and females there, and they had every kind of organized thing you would want. I went there and I thought I couldn't wait to come back. It's just so different here from any other college. We had no football games. We had none of those things, and yet there was something that it draws you in here. And a lot of it, you think about the history of the place, and you're in this old building. The thing is, it looks so new now, though. The dorms look nothing like they used to.
Yeah.
We had the same wallpaper and the same overstuffed chairs. And
I have some pictures from Janet of you guys covering the wallpaper and the cigarette boxes.
Oh, yeah. We smoked.
Yeah, she was repulsed by the wallpaper.
I thought it was very cool because it matched the fabric of the chairs. I'd never seen anything like it. And we had drapes, and it was what you would find in an old hotel.
Exactly.
But it was a lot of fun. Oh man, we had a great time. when she came, she was a floor underneath me, but I had the room on the corner with the balcony on the second floor overlooking the pool. And at that time, you could drive through the motor entrance. This was a drive-through.
Oh, yeah.
And horses and carriages came through, and cars drove through, and you could park. And so we would go hang over my balcony. If you can see it, I think, even from here.
Yep, I know exactly where it is.
And look over and see the guys at night, who's driving up through the motor entrance. You could see if they parked on this side. But the more fun thing you could do, you could always see who's at the pool. So I always knew who was doing who at that pool. It was so fun. It was crazy. we just had the best time.
It was so funny. It's also so funny to me that it's just like, we've grown in numbers, of course, but we're still such a small college compared to others.
I'm so glad. Do you get a small
Yes.
college feel to the place?
Yes, because I was going to say, like, between your stories and Janet's stories, it still feels like that. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and we're such a tight-knit, unified little community. The faculty, too. Janet talked a lot about how close your relationships were with the faculty, because I know the women lived in the dorm, right? And just with small class sizes, that is one of my favorite things about this school. It is such a big deal to know your professors.
And from the first day, we had fabulous professors. It's not really that hard to attract good faculty members at a school in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
In a setting like this. Who wouldn't want to work in a setting like this? Unless you wanted to, the early days, you might have preferred to work for a more prestigious institution, but it was a wonderful way to get great experience. And we really, truly had an unbelievable faculty and staff. And people who were committed to the place. It was quite the experience, because you'd be walking to class and, Reverend Redding's got his comparative religion class outside under that tree.
Yep. And we still do that too.
I love that.
Yeah.
Don't you love that?
I do. And I tell my friends who go to bigger universities about, oh yeah, we had class on the lawn. We sat in a circle like we were in kindergarten and just had a discussion on the lawn. And they're like, what kind of school do you go to? And I'm like, Flagler.
Paradise.
Yeah, it's just the way that it is.
I know. I think so too. I'm so glad to talk to you and to hear your version as a current student, because I don't have access to the students anymore, and I've known a few over the years, but it's nice to hear your perspective, because and it's nice to know that you're interested in what came before you too, because there's a lot of history here.
Yes.
And a lot of people put a lot of hard work and thought into this place once we were all congregated, once we were all here. But I also think too, it never ever once occurred to me that this place would not make it. I never ever thought that we would not make it. And once Bill Proctor was brought on board, I knew that he would put this place on the map, because he was that good of a leader. And that's what it took, was that commitment and that vision and that leadership. So we learned a lot about vision and leadership. The other thing that Bill Proctor did for this school that I thought was very important, once we were accredited in 1974, he said, we need another goal to work to, Beverly. He has a great southern accent. He called me Beverly. He said, Beverly. Anyway, he said, what we need is another goal that unites unifies the faculty and the staff and the student body to work towards something. It's very important that we have a vision. So, you know, he had a vision for this school and planned strategically of how to get there. The first few years, he was basically trying to find enough money to keep the doors open. And he would, that summer before college opened, he said he and Colonel Honecker, who was working here at the time, and he was the head of the financial part of it, they would work till 7, 8, 9 at night, sometimes midnight, trying to figure out finances of how to really actually get it to keep the doors open. So it never occurred to me that we would not. Isn't that amazing? I know, and I think I never, as much as I was concerned, I was more concerned that the college might close its doors my junior year. After Dr. Proctor, I was never concerned that it would close, even though we had a lot of obstacles to overcome to keep the doors open. I knew once Dr. Proctor was here, I had complete faith in the future of the college, and I think that's somewhat amazing. But you know, I mean, I would think when you're a student here now, you never think about the leadership needing to be good for it to keep its doors open.
Right.
So you're exactly right. I was thinking about a lot of different things when I was a freshman, and when I was a sophomore, a junior, and when I was a junior particularly, working to keep the doors open so that your college won't close. I remember telling Mr. Lewis, I said, you know, it's unbelievable to think that I've learned so much, and yet I'll have nothing to show for it. And how close we did actually came. But Carlson basically just walked away from it. So.
Yeah.